Yo, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, the Vengeance B. What you watching on TV? So tonight I was watching episode 4 of the HBO show It. Welcome to Derry. It's coming together. It's coming together. You know what's so funny is I would be curious to know how many times, if Google has a stat on how many people are going to search the word Galoo tonight. That's going to be funny. I actually was tempted to Google it, and I probably still will, but I wanted to talk about the show while it was still fresh on my mind. I just got done watching it. And so episode 4 opens up with the kids, right? So, it closed out with the last episode where they had the whole little debacle at the cemetery. They were able to get the images of some of the ghosts that were in the cemeteries. And so they go back to the school, they develop the film, blah, 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 the pictures come out. I already knew in my mind, I know for a fact, even though they get these pictures developed, I already knew that whoever they showed them to wasn't going to be able to see what it is they saw. I already knew that. So this episode opens up with the kids all going down to the police station, and they meet up with the chief dude to show him the pictures. The pictures that they show him are just regular, non-eventful photos of different things in the cemetery. So the exchange that they end up having with him is, it's pretty bleak, right? He's basically y'all are kids, mind your business. Going on. What I'm gonna do is gonna be worse than these ghosts that y'all scared of. Okay, Mr. Police Chief, man. That's what's up. We go through the intro. The next scene is where Rose, the native lady who owns the little thrift spot, she ends up delivering something that was purchased by Major Hanlon's wife. She bought something from Rose's shop. And so Rose and her nephew come to deliver it, so they have a brief exchange. Right before Rose showed up to her house, she was actually reading a headline in the newspaper. She's reading an article about the black guy that was arrested for the disappearing children. You could see her wheels turning over that whole situation. And then Rose comes up. She's like, "Hey, I bought your thing." She's like, "Oh, you didn't have to do that." She's like, "Oh, it's no problem. It's cool." So as they're getting a delivery, she offers Rose a cup of coffee. Rose comes in, she chills for a minute, and they kind of talk a little bit. And then basically Rose is like, "Hey, it's a nice place. We love Derry. My family been here for, some different generations. But it would be wise that if you love somebody, you keep them close to you. Don't take being here for granted. Keep your people close." So that is kind of a red flag in her mind. She's like, "Oh, okay." The lieutenant had made a request when they went on a little excursion last time. The major and lieutenant went on some kind of little excursion. And so he did request that he get a spot for him and his friends to be able to kind of chill and relax. So it looks like they got a spot somewhere off base. They gave them some kind of little storage unit thing that they're no longer using at the military. Basically, I guess they discarded it a long time ago. We get a chance to see where the military boys get a chance to get a spot to go out there and chill and hang out. It does show a scene between Will and his mom, so I finally learned the little boy's name and the wife. I promise I'm gonna learn her name eventually, but Major's wife, Major Hanlon's wife. Oh, her name is Charlotte. Oh my God, it just came to me. Her name is Charlotte because she told the man at the police station, "I'm Charlotte Hanlon." Da, da, da. Anyway, so I do know her name. Okay, whatever. Anyway, there is a scene where Will gets home from school and he runs in his room to find the pictures that he and the other kids took. I guess he held on to them, right? So he took them home. He goes in his room, goes into the drawer. I think his intention was probably to analyze the pictures a little bit more to kind of see, he wanted to look at them again. So as he's looking for them, he realizes they're not there. And turns out his mother, Miss Charlotte Hanlon, she found him when she was cleaning up, right? So she talks to him about it, and she's kind of going over. She just want to know what's going on with him. So he actually opens up to her, tells her about the friend Ronnie from school, and their little adventure and kind of what they've been going through. And they decide at that time not to tell the father, right? They don't tell Major just yet. So it's around this time where Charlotte and Major is having dinner and stuff, and so they decided, he needs to relax a little bit and take their son out because, little man is he seemed like he's struggling a little bit. While they were at dinner, they were asking him to open up, and at that point, him and his mom kind of had the secret, but in order for it to not look like they had a secret, she was kind of pushing for him to tell his dad about the new girl, the friend that was a girl. I thought it was so funny when the dude was like, is she... And so I don't know how many people picked up on that, and I know exactly what he meant, and I thought it was so interesting how they worked that in there. I'm telling you, I'm getting Lovecraft Country from this, for real. Especially when we get to the explanation of the Galoo. Well done. Well done. So he decides to take his son out fishing. Will had caught something, it let go. And so they're kind of excited. He's like, oh, you know, I'm doing a good job. And Dad's like, yeah, you're doing a good job. We're going to try it again. So he goes back to the car to get some more bait so they can try to lure something else. And while he's at the car, Will has his first experience with whatever the thing is by himself. His fear experience turns out to be him coming face to face with his father. And his father, which is he's still very much alive. But the vision of his father is burned up. And he tries to pull him under the water. And so obviously he freaks out. He's screaming and hollering. His dad hears him. He rushes back over there to rescue him. And his dad, he's like, what's going on? And the son explains it to him. And he's like, what, you tripping? You know what I'm saying? And so he's looking at his wrist. And there's like visible evidence of him being attacked by something, right? So they burn off. But Will obviously is shaken up, but Daddy is shaken up too. Major is shaken up by this. He's like, yo, like this is some old shit, right? The other really dope scene that I liked is when the kids all get back together. So they meet up at the tower spot, their little hideout, and Will is telling them about his fear experience and what happened. Oh, Will gives an interesting theory on this. The adrenaline, or what's the other hormone, cortisol or something. We don't do science around here, but whatever the hormones are that show up when you're scared of shit. Basically, his theory is that whatever is hunting them wants to elevate those hormones because apparently you taste better when you're more afraid. Okay. We'll take that. We'll take that. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So, okay. Ooh, Marge comes back in a big way in this episode. So, the interaction between Marge and Lily kind of have slowed down a little bit since she ended up having to go back to Juniper Hill, and Marge was trying to get in good with these what they call them, the patty cakes. So she's been busy dealing with them. Well, back at the schoolhouse, Marge basically, and Lily been keeping her distance for good reason, but she actually invites Lily to have lunch with her that day. She basically put it to her like, yo, I miss you. We haven't been hanging out, and I think we should hang out. Have lunch with me today, and we'll just talk. So Lily is kind of like, okay, so she agrees to have lunch with her. After the scene where Lily agrees to have lunch with Marge, it takes us back to the police station where Charlotte ends up going. This is where I learned her name, y'all. I'm so proud I have remembered her name from this scene. So Charlotte ends up going back to the police station. Her main objective is to be able to speak with, I actually forgot to mention the scene where she was talking to the chief about it before. She basically kind of inquired about the young man that was in jail, which is Ronnie's father, for these kids missing or disappearing or whatever. And she requested to talk to him at that time. Chief was like, "No, mind your business. This ain't got nothing to do with you. Gone on." So she was like, "Okay." So she actually goes and meets up with the grandmother, Ronnie's grandmother, at the house, and she's like, "Yo, do y'all have any representation? Like, what's going on with it?" And so grandmother, you can tell she just really don't know what to do, and she's kind of folded, I guess, under the pressure. And, she's like, well, shit, I thought he was in his room, but it turns out he wasn't in his room. So, I mean, I don't know what to do. Charlotte's like, well, you don't think he really killed these kids? She's like, no, I don't think he killed them kids, but he wasn't in his room, Fast forward up a couple scenes where Charlotte goes back to the police station with a letter from the grandmother. She went over to the grandmother's house to talk to her. Basically, she got permission to be able to go in to see Ronnie's dad. So she gets there. The guy that's helping her is like, no, you got to wait till the police chief get back. And she basically, she read him for filth and is like, yo, either you let me in or I'm going to bring the cavalry. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, okay. So he lets her go in, and she goes in and meets with Ronnie's father, which it actually comes out that he wasn't in his room where he said he was. So it's always terrible to lie, y'all. When, especially when it comes to shit like this, holding on to the lie is probably going to be a little worse for you than just being like, hey, here's where I was or whatever. So as she's talking to him, that comes up, right? The fact is that he did lie. I sense that. Here's the thing. When I think I realized he was lying. They found the cigarette pack, right? This was last episode, I think, episode 3. Yeah. So they find a cigarette pack. Chief is like, "Here's your cigarette pack. I know you're lying. I'm gonna get your ass, right? Cool." I knew right then. I said, okay, he probably wasn't in his room, and he probably was gone. Now we know he didn't kill the kids because we on the outside looking in. We know he's not responsible for what's going on with these children, but we know he lied about something. Instantly, I thought of maybe he's got like a male lover or something. And this is 62. I think it takes place in 1962. So obviously, especially with him being a black man, and then back in 1962, it's kind of a small town. They're probably not as fast paced as some of the bigger places. Even in some of the bigger places, it's probably a little taboo to be living an alternative lifestyle. But I know, in a small town, it probably is like unheard of and just completely unacceptable. So my train of thought was like, oh, okay, maybe he's got like a gay lover. And in my mind, I'm like trying to figure out who it could be amongst all the people and this and that or whatever. Turns out what he reveals, and I'm still not sure if I believe his story or not. I believe he still could be lying, but what I'll say is that he and Charlotte have a conversation once the police guy lets her back there into the interrogation room to kind of meet with him, right? She basically is telling him, listen, this is what I do, where I'm from, we get down. And I got your back, but you got to be honest with me, And so they start to talk a little bit. And she is like, we know you wasn't in that room. So you need to tell me where you were, because it's ultimately how you going to get off of, being blamed for this, So he actually reveals then that he wasn't in his room. He was having an affair with a white woman who happens to be married. And so that is why he is really adamant about keeping it secret. He don't want to get hung, number one, and then number two, he don't want her to get hurt. So I'm like, okay, I get that, but I knew I could tell he was lying. It just, he just was way too dodgy about it and shit, And so anyway, the colonel meets with another one of his right-hand men. They find out that some of the native kids are kind of hanging around the base, but they're on the outside of the fence, so they're not like trying to infiltrate or break in or nothing, but they can tell they're being watched. So Colonel tells them, well, why don't you just invite them in? Tell them they can come on in, right? That's important later on, because they're going to have a very intimate encounter with Rose's nephew. Hold that thought. We go back to the little setup place where the other soldiers, they got like a little, I guess like a bachelor pad. I don't know what to call it, like a little man cave or whatever. So they get their man cave. Now they're making good traction. They go in, everything is cleaned up. They setting everything up. They putting up their furniture. They call it a lo-fi system. I haven't heard lo-fi oh my God, I haven't heard that in so long. Anyway, that's like a stereo system for the folks in the back. And so Lieutenant actually goes out to take out some trash, right? So he's taking out a bag of trash, and he actually has a fear experience himself with who I believe is his grandmother. And she speaks to him, and he's kind of in a trance. He's like stuck, right? Just as that's going on, Major drives up. He jumps out the car, and he's like, yo, what the hell is going on here? What are we looking for? What's going on in these woods? And Lieutenant is just like, basically like, man, like, yo, you don't really want to know. Like, just, I do what they tell me to do. I don't do nothing extra. Just leave it alone. And Major is not with that. Obviously, he's not trying to hear that. But I think that he does gather, he tells Lieutenant about what happened with his boy and all that kind of stuff. And they both are seeing the seriousness of the situation, right? So Lieutenant, he's sticking to his guns. He not really, he's staying mum. He letting go no information. And he just like, I'm sorry. And he goes about his business. Oh, I also forgot to mention the pills. Lily has ushered these children into drug addiction, y'all. Oh. So she goes to school, meets up with the other kids. Now they understand that this thing is like feeding on their fear, right? And so in order to subdue their fear, she goes into her mama's secret stash and finds some kind of pills. Apparently the pills calm her mother down when she's worried about Lily and Bills. So she's giving each one, she took 4 pills and gave one to each child. And I'm like, this girl has done ushered these babies into drug addiction. This is not going well. So need to mention that. In the cafeteria, Marge and Lily are having lunch. As they're having lunch, the quarterback dude, he comes up and he's like, oh, hey, Marge. And he look at Lily like, hey, Lily, you know, he give her this little extra bit of like, you know. So Lily is kind of like, oh, shit, you know. And Marge is like, oh, I think he really likes you. And so she's kind of like, what? You know. Basically, we can see now this is definitely a setup. What Marge does is she tells Lily, oh, well, I think you should go talk to him. Lily is like, maybe, you know, but I can't do it. I got to go get freshened up first. Cool. So Lily goes into the bathroom so she can get herself together, you know. But the head patty cake girl, she comes up and she's like, oh, this is going to be great. She's going to go talk to him and he's going to embarrass her in front of the entire cafeteria. So they cut to the bathroom. Now Marge goes into the bathroom and check on Lily and see what's going on with her. Marge tried her best to get her out this bathroom. However, she does feel like a sense of guilt, right? You can tell she's like really weighed down by the guilt and she really wants to tell the truth. But something stopped her. Well, no. What stops her is she looks in the mirror. We're going to get to that. So anyway, Lily goes into one of the stalls to actually pee first. She's like, oh, I got to pee. So she goes into one of the stalls. Marge, while Lily is in the stall, Marge is starting to tell her, oh, I really need to tell you the truth. You know, she's getting ready to tell her something. We don't know what the something is. I'm just assuming she's getting ready to tell her, maybe you shouldn't go out there because these girls are full of shit and they're going to embarrass you. That's what I'm thinking she's going to tell her. However, we're not going to never know. Because from that point, Marge, her fear experience, I think it has something to do with her eyes. And so her eyes bulge out of her head and she is. And see, now as I'm explaining it, I'm thinking about the actual effect. And so when I was watching it, I was like, this hit me like the cemetery special effects did, right? I just kind of was like, what the fuck is going, like, what is happening? So she's freaking out and she runs into the hallway and she's trying to get some relief. So she's trying to like cut her eyes out. Like her eyes are protruding from her head. They're probably about a foot out from her face. So for some reason, she's urged to like cut them off, which seems counterproductive. So Lily comes out and Lily is trying to help her. She was actually trying to get out of the stall and help her as Marge was panicking. She could hear her. She's trying to get out. She couldn't. We know what time it is, right? Pennywise doing his thing. Finally, Marge makes it to I want to say like it wasn't really a wood shop class. Maybe it was a wood cutting class. I don't know. It was the kind of classroom where you have big ass drills and saws, accessible to the children. So Marge wanders into one of these classrooms and she ends up sawing off her eyes, y'all. She ends up sawing off her eyes. I don't know what to think about that. It just was a lot. It was a lot. Obviously, Lily runs in trying to help her. She's trying to wrestle. I think she was like trying to stab herself in the eyes with a screwdriver or some kind of putty knife or something. And so Lily's trying to wrestle the putty knife away from her and trying to help her to, give her some help. Of course, in the midst of her helping the girl, after she sawed off her eyeballs, she lands on top of her with the putty knife in her hand. She's trying to finally, she gets it loose. She snatches it, but it's in the air. Now all the children rush into the classroom, and of course Lily is hovering over the girl with the putty knife in the air like she done attacked her and hacked off both her eyeballs. Like she's hacked off both the girl's eyeballs. I'm like, y'all, what the fuck is what's happening? So, oh my gosh, I don't know. So I just felt like that her fear experience was a lot, and it was a little kooky. I laughed through that entire scene. I don't think that was the emotion or the response I was supposed to have. However, I could be wrong. That could have been the intention of the director or whoever put that shit together. But it was hilarious to me. I laughed through that whole scene. Lily is probably going to end up back at Juniper Hill. We don't know just yet. The episode ends with Major goes to Colonel and wants to know what the hell they're looking for, right? Colonel is like, basically, I don't know, he's pretty vague about it, but what happens is he ends up taking Major into, those rooms behind the two-way mirrors, like interrogation rooms and shit. And so they have one of the nephews, they got Rose's nephew in the interrogation room. He was one of the kids that had been kind of hanging around the base. that Colonel said, hey, let him on in, right? They have Lieutenant in there with the nephew. So nephew is in there with Lieutenant. Lieutenant is trying to get him to give information as far as the location of this magical thing that they're looking for. And nephew was like, I ain't telling you shit. You kiss my ass, right? And so, well, he didn't really say it in those words, but that's the gist of his disposition. And so Lieutenant, now we get a more in-depth view of what his gift is, right? So he somehow taps into Daniel's mind, and he's like transported to this room with a bunch of doors in it, which I think represent memories for nephew. And so he goes into one door with the memory of Rose talking to nephew when he was a little boy. We get the story of the Galoo, honey. Now this scene I really loved. I loved the Galoo scene. So they explain the legend of the Galoo. They explain how this magical evil thing was like transported to Earth millions of years ago. And it was in this special star with these special stone, and the stone was responsible for keeping them safe because one of their all-time great warriors had chipped off a piece of it and was using it to stab at the thing to keep the people safe, right? So that method ran out, I think they ran out of the stone, or there's a whole legend behind the Galoo thing. Basically, the Galoo was a native legend that was passed down where this thing shows up as your worst fear. It was so interesting for the natives. Their worst fear, for some reason, their fear was depicted as a moose. What they did explain is that the Galoo creature had been released because of the arrival of the settlers. Go figure. So the settlers get here and fuck everything up. Of course, I digress. That's important because when the Galoo shows itself to the natives, it shows up as your worst fear, right? And so their worst fears seem to be depicted in moose, a giant moose with red eyes, and there were apparitions of the settlers, which was their worst fear. Found that fascinating. Very, very interesting. I wonder how a certain demographic of people will feel about that being depicted in the show. I wonder how people are going to respond to that being a part of this show. But that was a really dope scene. It's way too much to explain. You would just have to watch it. But we do get a more in-depth understanding of what Pennywise actually is. It sounds like it's really this thing that the legend of the Galoo, if you will. And as they were talking about it, I was thinking to myself, damn, I should Google that. And I bet Google done had a lot of hits for Galoo tonight after that episode aired. So, so that is episode 4. Okay. My thoughts on episode 4. I liked episode 4. Very interesting how the story is kind of turning together. I will also say that I was not a fan of the nosy wife, Miss Charlotte. In the beginning, I'm thinking, why don't you just mind your business? However, we do need the busybodies to get shit done. And I do believe that her being a nosy busybody is going to probably be responsible for getting this man off of this dreadful charge that he's being blamed for. Because that's a lot. Like, that's not being like accused of like stealing a cheeseburger or a pack of bubblegum. I do believe there's going to be a little bit more tension between her and her husband because he has specifically asked her, mind your business, sit down. Do not get involved with these people in their business. Just don't do it. But it looks like she is compelled to work against that. But this episode overall, it was pretty good. Will is a believer now. Will is definitely a believer now. And I just, okay. Episode 4. So this was episode 4 of It. Welcome to Derry. That's all I have to say about that shit, y'all. It's your girl, the Bingin' B. Finna go find me something else to watch on TV. I'll see y'all soon. Bye.